Hey, welcome back, everyone. So, some breaking news. Trump has gotten his special master appointed. Well, not appointed yet, but the judge gave the green light for Trump to do it. That's going to be significant. What that means is that in this case, the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago. Trump has gotten the green light to appoint, or at least, ask for, or, the person he wants to have nominated, a special master who will be able to review the documents the FBI and DOJ took. Now, by doing so, that will let the special master determine if any of those documents are privileged or should not be basically taken by the FBI, which also will be very interesting because it could tie into the idea of whether Trump declassified the documents, which he did, whether they took documents they should not have taken, which they did, and whether some of those documents will be related to his RICO case against the government and therefore should not be taken and seized and indefinitely put into storage for a pending case, which the FBI currently is. So I'll give some updates on that as we get them. Breaking news, so it's a big deal. Also, folks, quick update. We're going to be making the J6 doc free. So anybody who wants to watch it, you haven't seen it yet, I know some of you are on Rumble or YouTube, go watch it. We're making it free for, I think, all of September. Share it. If you know friends who didn't want to subscribe to watch it, share it. Tell them it's free now. They can watch it. I know it costs us a bit to make, of course. But just in terms of national importance, we've decided that the doc is important enough where we should just make it free. So, folks, please share it again. And also, we have DVDs coming out. So, epochshop.com, epochshop.com. We also have it for sale, and you can check out our other merch there as well. That said, folks, great having y'all here. I want to go into what's happening with government censorship because there's some bombshell. I know I don't like the overuse of the word, but there are some bombshell revelations on government censorship, and it's an overused word, but it's the only way to use it in this case. The government has been meeting regularly with Facebook and other social networks, having meetings and advising them on how to censor people. They even have what they call the disinformation dozen of key influencers on COVID vaccines who they say should be censored. It's huge. I'm going to show you the actual documents and we're going to go over it. Also, Project Veritas has had some interesting reporting recently, new videos, undercover recordings, exposing religious discrimination and some of the radical agendas that are in American schools. It's some wild stuff showing, for example, the discriminating against Catholics, something the U.S. military is also exposed with when it came to evangelical Christians. It's wild stuff, folks, and all of this is going to have huge implications. One, because, I'll get into it. On the Project Veritas one, because this is going to be basically showing the flip around of the narratives. You cannot make anti-discrimination laws and try to enforce them based on race without discriminating against people based on race or religion or whatever else. The irony of it is that they are beginning to do what they're accusing others of doing. By trying to eliminate discrimination, they've become the discriminators. By trying to stop bullying, they've become the bullies. And it's magnificent how it's just falling to pieces. At the same time, too, this censorship case, what this means is that all your friends who I don't know if you got it too. I had it where some friends of mine who were like borderline anarchists were defending corporate censorship. I was telling them, hey, these big corporations like Twitter, Facebook, yeah, they're censoring me. It's crazy. And they're like, well, it's not censorship if a business does it. And these are guys whose creed is about, evil corporations and the millionaires and billionaires, the AOC lingo and stuff. They're against it, but when you talk about them politically censoring people they don't like, they love it. What this means, and I'm going to show you these documents, this new case on Facebook that's going to affect Twitter as well. What this means is that the government is censoring people, and they're doing it under the illusion of corporations and private businesses. This is actual fascism. This is a fascist in the and I'm not doing that as a name-calling thing. This is fascist and the actual like practice of what the word means. This is government corporate tyranny that is being used to seize people's rights and violate the law. Folks, let's go into this. First off here, let me show you this. This is the actual like lawsuit page. This is Eric Schmidt, Missouri Attorney General. And it says, Missouri and Louisiana Attorneys General ask court to compel Department of Justice to produce communications between top officials, i.e. Biden administration officials, and social media companies. And it says, yesterday, Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt and Louisiana Attorney General Jeff Landy filed a joint statement on discovery, which is where you can get documents from people, right? Part of a lawsuit process, on discovery disputes, asking the Louisiana District Court to compel the Department of Justice to turn over communications between high-ranking Biden administration officials from the White House, State Department, FBI, and others, including, they might even get Fauci's, although the government's trying to block it. I'll go into that later. The government's trying to block the release of Fauci's emails with these social media companies. I'm not even joking. Again, we'll get into it in a bit. And it's all these big agencies and major social media companies. It says the Department of Justice has already turned over communications between a number of federal officials and social media companies, but has refused to provide communications between top-ranking officials and social media companies like Fauci, for example. In other words, what they're doing right now, through this lawsuit, they have a discovery process. That discovery process lets them request documents from businesses and from the government. Part of that process, they're releasing emails, and the emails are showing communications mostly among like just government employees and these social media companies. And the government, the Biden administration, is trying to prevent the release of high-level officials and those social media companies, because this wasn't just like a business relationship where, the Facebook was just talking to they had this as well, but just talking to these like low-level officials as part of an advisory process, which is even kind of illegal, at least in terms of the government advising on censorship. This is also like higher up. This is leadership positions. This is top-level positions within these government agencies working hand in glove through these social media networks to violate people's constitutional rights. Further in, it says this, the joint statement continues, quote, the discovery provided so far demonstrates that this censorship enterprise is extremely broad, including officials in the White House, HHS, DHS, CISA, CDC, NIAID, i.e. Fauci, and Office of the Surgeon General. All of those agencies involved in government censorship. And evidently, other agencies as well, such as the Census Bureau, the FDA, the FBI, the State Department, the Treasury Department, the U.S. Election Assistance Commission, and we'll see if there's even more to add to this list, folks. This is like a whole of government action to censor you, to make sure you can't talk about vaccines, to censor things on elections. And one of the reasons why we're not broadcasting right now on the Crossroads YouTube channels is because we're banned for 2 weeks for our Dinesh D'Souza interview we published months ago, which means they retroactively censored us. And I believe, based on that they might have updated their algorithm specifically to censor Dinesh, which is, again, why we're not. Those of you watching on YouTube, if you can even find us, it's because we're on the Epic TV channel, right? We're banned for 2 weeks. They gave us another strike. YouTube, you get 3 strikes, they kick you off the platform, but the strikes reset after a while, so we've gotten several 1 strikes, and then we don't violate it long enough where they don't kick us off. So we're still on YouTube somehow. But further in, folks, let me go over this a bit more. All these agencies involved with censorship, and then it says this, and it rises to the highest levels of the U.S. government, including numerous White House officials. And it says defendants have objected to producing some of the most relevant and probative information in their possession. Meaning, folks, we're probably going to see that very incriminating information where top-level officials are communicating with Facebook and maybe Twitter about government censorship. The elf tossing Susie. Anyways, now this is actually significant. Those of you who've been watching the show for a while would probably know some of this already, because if you remember several months ago, I think I did like 2 episodes where we went in depth over the different government censorship programs, the Infodemic under the WHO, the Countering Disinformation Act of the Obama administration passed soon after Obama left office, and some of the other censorship programs. And what we're seeing here actually aligns with what we talked about previously, because if you remember, specifically, there were government directives talking about working not just with social media, but even media companies and, quote unquote, fact checkers to suppress information on, COVID-19, vaccines, elections, and a whole lot of other issues. And in the government's own words, if you remember, they called this a whole of government approach. And if you remember this huge list of agencies we just talked about, this looks like a whole of government approach. The whole U.S. government working on censorship, which maybe explains what they've been doing this whole time, because they don't seem to be doing much else. Right? All right, it continues. This censorship enterprise, according to the this lawsuit press release, is proven by the Department of Justice's productions thus far, but the full extent of federal officials' collusion with social media companies on censorship is unknown until the Department of Justice produces further communications requested by Missouri and Louisiana. And folks, I assume we're going to be seeing those documents. Even as it stands currently, it is looking really bad for them. Because already as it stands currently, Facebook and Twitter are being used as tools from the government to censor people and violate the First Amendment of the Constitution. And probably meaning we can all magnificently sue them if we so choose. A bit more on this. Zuckerberg, if you remember, recently spoke with Joe Rogan talking about how Facebook censored the Hunter Biden story. And if you remember that, Hunter Biden laptop story ahead of the elections, and they said, well, the FBI didn't technically ask them, but, basically Zuckerberg made it sound pretty plausible that the FBI did advise them on the censorship, meaning it wasn't Facebook's fault, it was the FBI's fault. And by taking that step in terms of, saying, hey, it wasn't us, it was them, they really made it clear who is the culpable one if there might be a lawsuit. The government, in its whole of government approach, is, of course, in their own words, going through the medium of social media and so on in order to do this. Facebook's trying to, wipe its hands clean as it goes forward with this. Now, also on this, information on government censorship really came to the forefront after Zuckerberg's interview on Joe Rogan. And that also included, well, now as we're seeing these newly released emails obtained by these attorney generals. And the Biden administration is, I'm going to show you these documents in a sec. The Biden administration was arranging weekly and monthly calls with Facebook about censoring information. Folks, before we go on, we do have a sponsor today. Today's episode is brought to you by Secure. Over 155 million Americans are affected by data leaks in 2020. The average American had their personal data stolen about 4 times over the year. People get anxious because they can't protect their online data and activity. But now there's an email and messenger app called Secure. That's Secur. That can give privacy and security for sending emails and messages. Secure's server and data center are hosted in Switzerland, which has the strictest data privacy laws in the world. Secure does not rely on big tech companies like Amazon, Google, or Microsoft, which also means it's not subject to the Intrusive Cloud Act. Secure does not ask for your phone number, it does not mine your data, or upload your contacts. It functions by adding people you know, then adding their secure numbers. You can also send an invite to non-users. Secure protects you from hackers getting onto your phone. You have privacy while you're on the app. It's $5 for the messenger, $7 for the email, and only $10 for the email and messenger package. You can visit secure.com today for a free 7-day trial, or you can use the promo code Joshua to get 25% off. And big thanks out to Secure for sponsoring today's episode. Now, let's continue on this. Let me show you the actual documents. So what you're looking at right now is the actual, I believe the affidavit, the actual, layout of the lawsuit, basically. And let me just go over some of these big revelations. I was having a blast. I was going through all their documents, and it's bad. There's no other way to put it. It's really bad. It's good. It's coming out, but what they were doing is really, really bad and probably very, very illegal. Let me show you, folks. July 28th, 2021. This is an email from Facebook to the CDC, right? And this email, Facebook tells the CDC, quote, I have been talking about, in addition to our weekly meetings, doing a monthly misinfo/debunking meeting. So they were already having weekly meetings at this point, according to this document. They were already having weekly meetings, and Facebook was proposing an additional meeting on every month on misinformation and debunking. And they say, and maybe claim topics communicated a few days prior so that you can bring in the matching experts and chat casually for 30 minutes or so. Is that something you'd be interested in? CDC replies the same day on July 28th, 2021 to Facebook. And the CDC states, yes, we'd love to do that. I do think getting the claims several days in advance will be critical. Will be critical to being sure we have what you need. They were having weekly meetings and monthly meetings between Facebook and the CDC. This is just one of the government branches exposed. Now, this shows first off that Facebook was communicating with the CDC and was using the CDC as a fact-checker organization. And of course, the CDC involved directly in that role was informing Facebook what they believed was true or false so that Facebook could censor people based on their directives. Now, again, this was mainly about censoring medical information, and the CDC, as we've seen, keeps updating its standards, including, I've read now, have you heard hydroxychloroquine is now safe and effective to use against COVID-19? I'm not even joking. The CDC updated their standards. Anyways, stuff like that, right? Let me show you this other document. I want to go over a few of these different documents. This document is from July 16th, 2021. And this is Facebook talking to HHS, Health and Human Services. And Facebook says, quote, reaching out after what has transpired over the past few days following the publication of the misinformation advisory and culminating today in the president's remarks about us. Biden said something about them, apparently. I know our teams met today to better understand the scope of what the White House expects from us on misinformation going forward. Folks, what the White House expects from them on misinformation, Facebook is asking HHS what the White House expects from them when it comes to misinformation, i.e. on censorship. Now, why this is in reaction, of course, to Biden's public statements about Meta and about the misinformation advisory. It shows that as a business, they were acting to censor at the advisory of the government, and not just the government, but even the White House itself, and even based on Biden's speech specifically about this. Now, if you want to talk about illegal censorship, one of the big things, I mentioned previously that Trump has a lawsuit against Twitter right now, specifically arguing that this may be the case. These documents now add so much ammunition to that lawsuit that it's like, unless you have a judge who just doesn't care about is more politicized than based on fact, there's no way Twitter's probably going to win that lawsuit at this point, I'd say. But the argument of Trump's lawsuit is that if the government is, for example, let's say the House has a committee and they call in Zuckerberg and, the other heads of these big tech companies and make them sit down and they question them. Why are you not censoring? Why are you not censoring this? Why are you not censoring that? You have misinformation about COVID, about vaccines. Why are you not censoring it? The argument that Trump's going to be making, is making in that lawsuit, is that that type of government action is equal to government censorship, because the government, these officials in the House, are encouraging and even forcing under oath and criticizing them in front of the country, encouraging them and asking why they are not censoring people, encouraging them to censor and asking why they're not doing it. The old lawsuit was based more around that. What this is showing is that the reality of government censorship is beyond what even we knew, even beyond what they had previously in that lawsuit. That even from the White House itself, Biden gives a speech and then Facebook sends an email to HHS asking what the White House expects from them when it comes to, censoring what they claim is misinformation. How the government is determining what is true and what is false and silencing people who it believes should be silenced. Now, a bit more into this. Again, this shows that as a business, Facebook was acting to censor at the advisory of the government, up to the top, up to Biden himself. Let me show you another document here. I'm still going over the lawsuit. There's several pages, and I want to really go into some of these. This is from July 23rd, 2021. And this is Facebook in an email with HHS again. And Facebook says, quote, "Thanks for taking the time to meet earlier today. I wanted to make sure you saw the steps we took just this past week to adjust policies on what we are removing with respect to misinformation, as well as steps taken to further address the disinfo dozen." Folks, between Facebook and the government, the U.S. government, they identified a dozen people who they were targeting for censorship, which I'll show you the names in a minute. And Facebook says, "We removed 17 additional pages, groups, and Instagram accounts tied to the disinfo dozen," these 12 people they were targeting. So a total of 39 profiles, pages, groups, and IG accounts deleted thus far, resulting in every member of the disinfo dozen having had at least one such entity removed. Well, you're also continuing to make 4 other pages and profiles which have not yet met their removal thresholds, more difficult to find on our platform. So they're not just censoring outright, they're shadow banning. And even remember, the whole idea of shadow banning was considered conspiracy just a few years ago, because people were like, "Hey, why is my Facebook page that used to get all these views suddenly getting no reach?" Well, people are saying, "Are they shadow banning me?" And that was, of course, the catchphrase that went around, "Are they shadow banning?" Here you have Facebook admitting that they do this. They limit the reach of things. They make it so that people, even though you don't think it's being censored because it's still there, you can still link to it, you can still find it, that people have a limited reach with it, that you're tweeting or posting on there and it's going into thin air and nobody's seeing it because they are shadow banning you. I think they did the same thing to my YouTube channel, actually, which, to be honest, at this point, I'm kind of glad we're off YouTube. We're on it still, but ironically, when they censored YouTube, we just went and built Epic TV, and actually it worked out better for us in the long run. So maybe jokes on them in the end. But at the same time, too, I think they did that to my YouTube channel, actually, because after J6 and the protests, they froze not just my channel, but, all the Epic Times channels, I think other than maybe Romans. They froze all of our channels, they demonetized them, and then suddenly the growth just froze. It just stopped almost entirely. And so, to me, that was like, wow, did they shadow ban me? Did they actually do that? And I think I think that's exactly what they did. We've been trying to ask them even for reasons on why they did it. They won't even tell us what the reason is. This censorship is really bizarre, actually, the way it works, and maybe until now, there's not much you could really do about it. But further in on this, let me go over this a bit more. So this Facebook is saying they're telling HHS they're censoring all these pages and groups, and they're shadow banning different pages and groups and so on. And they're calling it this disinfo dozen. And if they're saying that, you would assume that HHS would know exactly who they're talking about. That this was some kind of discussion that they had between Facebook and HHS, identifying these 12 individuals and saying they should be censored. And then Facebook is reporting back, explaining to HHS how they have taken steps to censor these people. And so they're communicating based on their meetings and their guidance how they have carried out the act of censorship, which is like, I mean, it's. I know we're laughing about it because I'm glad this is coming out, but the implications of this are terrifying. This is like Orwell type stuff. What we're reading here, I mean, it's good in that I think a lot of us suspected this was happening, but what we're reading here is really like dystopian. This is a massive corporation that has become, really the public forum, the town square where people get together and talk, and where, because a lot of our lives are so much online these days, where we talk to our friends and families, and where we send messages, and where we hold groups, and where those groups are used to organize events, that they are working directly with the government, not only to just delete these groups and delete these pages, but also to make it so that you think you're talking to people and you're not. Misleading their users under the directive of the government. And they say this as well, that they are also, this is Facebook, we are also expanding the group of false claims that we remove to keep up with recent trends of misinformation that we are seeing. Which is what I assume they did recently when they gave me a strike on YouTube, and which is why we're banned for 2 weeks from posting, on YouTube at least. We still have this. I think that they update their algorithms. So even though you think you're in compliance with them, they change the standards, and they'll even retroactively censor you. So Facebook is talking about that kind of updating their list of what is what can or cannot be talked about on their platform, what they'll ban people for. And then they state, finally, we will be sending you the latest version of our top 100 report later today per our regular schedule. This is Facebook reporting to the government about their censorship activities. That's what's happening. Facebook is giving like their official report to the government on how they are carrying out the act of censoring at the advisory of the government. Now, those disinfo dozen, these are 12 influencers who these social networks and the government, I guess, are claiming drive about 65% of information on social media against the COVID-19 vaccines. The disinfo dozen, and I personally hope all 12 of them sue Facebook and sue the government for this. The disinfo dozen are Joseph Mercola, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Ty and Charlene Bollinger, Sherry Tenpenny, Rizzi Islam, Rashid Buttar, Aaron Elizabeth, Sayer G., Kelly Brogun, Christine Northrup, Ben Tapper, and Kevin Jenkins. Those are the 12 people being targeted directly by HHS and by Facebook, according to the emails. All right, folks, that said, let's jump over exclusively to Epic TV because I don't care if they censor me at this point, but let's keep it while we can, right? Let's jump over exclusively to Epic TV. Also, just a quick update again, our J6 documentary is free. We are making it open and available to anybody. If you have friends or family who maybe were interested in watching it, but were like, I don't really want to subscribe to Epic TV, send it to them again. Tell them it's free. We decided internally. I mean, it costs. Doing these documentaries costs quite a bit of money, but I'm not complaining. Of course, it's important to do, and of course, through subscriptions, things work out. But we think that this is of public interest to the degree that I think more people should watch it. And so we've decided to make the J6 documentary free. So share it, folks. We have we'll put the link in the description or something. Share it. Help us get the word out. Send it to your friends and family members. Tell them it's free now. They can watch it without subscribing. And before we jump over as well, let me show you a trailer. We also did a special feature just recently called China's Walking Dead. And this is interviews with former top-level Chinese Communist Party officials, something that's very hard to get. And they're talking about kind of the inside world of the communist leadership. It's a really fascinating documentary. Let me show you that, then we'll jump over.
人活的那根本不是人啊，我们活的都叫做行尸走肉啊，没有灵魂的。
Kay has interviewed dozens of former communist officials and poured through official documents and speeches to understand the worldview of people serving the regime.
他说要共产党员成为党的驯化了的工具，
宣传的和实际的是脱节的，因为它不可能实际。
馆长特别残酷，特别黑暗。
是一场反对我们共产党的领导，要推翻我们社会主义制度的一场反革命暴乱。
All right, folks, again, be sure to check it out. That said, let's jump over exclusively to Epic TV. Those of you on YouTube or elsewhere, come join us. See you there. All right, folks. Those of you curious, by the way, the tea today is Taiwanese oolong tea in my official January 6th mug. The